What is up, Arc Junkies? Welcome back to the show. Joining me this week is my good friend, Bill Newell. Bill is a very highly respected welding engineer in our industry. He's spoken at several AWS seminars and conferences, hosted many classes on specialty welding and various alloys, and he's got over 5 decades of experience in the welding industry. In this episode, Bill and I talk about the importance of collaborations between welders and engineers. Bill shares many of his insights from his extensive experience in the welding industry, highlighting the importance of understanding the human element in welding and the need for continuous learning and improvement. We'll get right into his story after a quick word from our supporters. Today's episode of the Arc Junkies Podcast is brought to you by Send Cut Send. Get your custom parts quickly and affordably with Send Cut Send. Since 2019, they've been revolutionizing the industry with their CNC laser cutting, water jetting, CNC bending, powder coating, anodizing, zinc coating, nickel plating, hardware insertion, and tapping services. With a wide variety of materials including metals, woods, and composites, Send Cut Send can ship orders within 1 to 2 days of receiving it. The process is simple and cost-effective. Draw up what you need, upload it to their website, select your finishing and machining options, and they'll ship the parts right to your door. And if you don't have CAD software, it's not a problem. Send Cut Send has many designs to choose from off their website, or you can work with their design services team to create exactly what you need. For welders, fabricators, and makers, Send Cut Send is the ultimate solution for custom parts. And right now, listeners of the Arc Junkies podcast can save 15% when you go to sendcutsend.com/arcjunkies. And don't forget to give them a follow on Instagram at SendCutSend for more updates. Send Cut Send, quality custom parts made easy and fast. We're also brought to you by Outlaw Leather. Looking for custom welding gear that stands out? Outlaw Leather has you covered. They're known in the industry for offering top quality, handcrafted leather welding hoods. Outlaw Leather brings any design you can envision to life, from sports logos to military insignias or custom logos. Their hoods are highly recommended for comfort and durability, perfect for the demanding work welders face. Every hood is carefully handcrafted in the USA, ensuring superior quality. Outlaw Leather also offers a range of welding equipment on their website from trusted brands like Snakebelly, FlameTech Scorpion, TechnoWeld, Weiler Abrasives, and more. And right now, you can enjoy 15% off on all their in-stock leather goods when you use code word ARCJunkies in the discount box at checkout. Visit outlawleather.com to place your first order, and don't forget to give them a follow on Instagram at Outlaw Leather for their latest news and updates. Outlaw Leather, crafted with care, built to last. All right, you know what time it is. Fire up your machine, drop your hood, and turn me up 5.
Thank you for downloading show number 337 of the Arc Junkies Podcast.
You're listening to the Arc Junkies Podcast, helping you make every weld better than your last with each episode. And now your host, Jason Becker.
All right, Bill, how the hell you been, man?
Real good, Jason. Apparently your weather's been worse than ours.
Oh, it was horrible yesterday. So we were scheduled to record yesterday, and like at 6:04, this storm, I looked over my shoulder and I seen this storm coming in, and I really don't pay much attention to the weather, but I seen, that it started getting a little dark and everything. I was like, it's, rain, it's Florida. No, 4 minutes later, it started thundering and booming and just clashing and clanging, and then all of a sudden, like within 5 minutes, the power was out. And our electric company, they sent me an email. They're like, hey, we'll have everything. We understand there's an outage in the area. We'll have everything back and running by 8 p.m. Okay. I mean, they're usually pretty good with this. I haven't been without power since the hurricane back in 2017. And so sure enough, 8 o'clock rolls around, power kicks back on long enough for everything to power up, and then it shuts right back down. We didn't get full power restored till 9 o'clock last night.
Well, it is that time of the year.
Yeah, usually. I mean, and it usually starts right around June. It started a lot later this year because here we are, end of July, beginning of August, and now we're getting the rainstorms every day. But before, like June, you could usually set your watch to it. 3:30 every day, you're going to get an afternoon shower. But I know we've got this tropical storm kind of moving up, coming our direction. So that's always fun.
Indeed.
Those things get Western real quick. So you've been on the show once or twice. I know you came on for the hydrogen workshop, but I've never had like Bill Newell on officially. And you've been considered as the welding Jedi Master, one of the welding Jedi Masters of the welding industry, according to my mentor. You're also my mentor's mentor. Super smart. How long have you been in the welding industry, Bill?
Over 50 years now.
Okay, you're not ready to hang your hat up?
No, I'm having too much fun.
What, at the point where it stops being fun, that's probably going to when you're going to retire.
That's right, or health issues just prevent it. But when you look forward to going to work every day, why quit? Now, my wife would disagree with that, but I've tried to slow down a little bit. But it's hard to do because the phone keeps ringing, the texts come, the emails, and the challenge now is folks will call with an issue or a problem, and I'll say, yeah, I know 4 people that could answer that question. I'm one of them. The other 3 are dead now. And that's something we're having, those of us with white hair, gray hair, no hair, having to deal with now is we look around and our confidants or our mentors are gone. So we've actually got to sit back and scratch our heads and say, well, okay, what can we live with, or what can we handle? And then sometimes, too, we're dealing with materials that are now obsolete. And that's making some people pull their hair out to go in and try to do code work, trying to address that on Section 9, for example. And more. I've been saying it for 20 years, and everybody said, oh, no, you're crazy. Well, now they're starting to listen because it's happening to them. And you have to get some of the high rollers be feeling the pain before they'll step up and say, okay, we got to do something about this. So there are some really interesting things coming on, and it's virgin territory. We've never been there really before, and so we're kind of having to feel our way.
You got to blaze a new trail. Exactly.
And that's why I'm so excited about, for example, what Arc Junkies does is you interview a broad spectrum of the industry, and those that follow you religiously then get a little bit of taste from a lot of different perspectives, opinions, industrial situations, and that kind of wisdom's hard to get in a single career. Okay, it's taken me 52 years to get where I'm at, or about that, and but I had great mentors along the way, and that's where I'm here. But without them, no. But you're bringing something to the table that I really think is very valuable. And you're interviewing people that I think are movers and shakers, like Shannon Armour, the Weld Like a Girl. Totally off the wall. We'd have never done that 10 years ago. But now it's okay. It's okay to talk about things like that. And, like the welding summit, I'm getting people, it's their first time to speak. They're scared to death. But I want to get them the experience, get them in front of people, meet people like you and others. And I think for too long, folks have been afraid to ask, afraid to approach somebody, and trying to do my little part. I'm just one person. But what you're doing, I think, is, like I said, it's very important because a lot of people are going to benefit from it.
Yeah, and I had somebody had made a comment when I started doing the podcast, because I had a big interest in pipe welding. And they're like, well, I'm not going to listen to the podcast because all he's going to talk about is pipe welding. No. I'm hitting every facet of the industry: race cars, aerospace, nuclear, structural, everything, the whole gamut, because there's so much to welding. And I didn't realize how much there was to welding until I got into education, which led me down the path of finding the AWS. And that, started allowing me to link up with other people. Like, that's how you and I met. I took your class by accident, because I was like, oh, I know absolutely nothing about pre-welding or preheating and post-heating. Let me go down to Miami, take this class, and learn some information about that. And I should have read the literature a little bit further, but I didn't realize it was on P91 pipe specifically. But I was like, hey, I'm here. I'm just going to go ahead and sit through this class. I'm going to learn something, and I'll be damned if I learned something. And I realized that there was just so much more to this industry. Like I did a lot of structural steel welding, a lot of architectural, ornamental repairs, miscellaneous fabrication, custom stuff. I've never touched aerospace. I've never done anything in regards to nuclear. The only pipe I've ever welded is in a welding lab practicing. But, to go to some of these seminars and conferences and talk to folks like you, Dr. Richard Campbell, Scott Witkowski, Dick Holdren, like some of these legends in our industry, because everybody talks about, we got this skills gap, this welder shortage, this, that, and the other thing. You guys are all the ones, with that information. You've been there, you've done that, you've answered the questions, you've found the stuff in the code book. Hell, you guys, between all y'all, you've written a good bit of the code book. Walt Spurko, huge in ASME Section 9 and several other codes, and yourself as well. So to have you on the podcast to share, your history, your stories, your journey, I really appreciate, you being available, making yourself available, not hoarding that information. There's so many people in this industry, they rest on that. That's what they're known for, and they're going to hold that information close to their chest. They're not going to share it with other people. I think that was a mentality, probably correct me if I'm wrong, like when you were coming up through the ranks, people didn't want to share information because, well, if you know how to do my job, they're gonna pay you less, and then they're gonna fire me, and I'm out of work.
You've identified a very important thing. I was fortunate because all my mentors didn't care about that. They wanted to pass. My one, he was a retired Navy chief ship fitter, and what he didn't know about welding really wasn't worth knowing. And he told me, he had a Southern accent. He said, "Now, young'un, you got to be a sponge. Keep your mouth shut and your ears open. And if you're going to open your mouth, ask questions. Don't make observations." But then I grew up in a family that was we had a bridge construction company, and it was kind of the same way. Everybody looked out for everybody else because, well, that was before insurance and things like that. If you got hurt, you were in trouble. But you mentioned about the Waltz and people like that. There was a conference this past spring with District, 12, 13, and 15. It was held up near Aurora, Illinois. And we went through, Dick Holdren spoke, Walt Spurko spoke, Dr. Rick Planin spoke. There's former past presidents spoke, I spoke, and of course we had a reception at the end. And this young lady came up, she was an inspector. She was just kind of in awe about all these people that were rubbing elbows and chatting with her. And she says, "Mr. Newell, I took 40 pages of notes today." I just kind of looked at her. I said, "You got carpal tunnel?" And she goes, "No." But she says, "I noticed that none of you guys, you or Mr. Spurko and all that, took one single note." And then she stopped, and her eyes got about the size of 50-cent pieces. She goes, "Oh, my word, you guys wrote the code." I said, "That's right." And we continue to write it. We continue to revise it because we see new and better ways to do things, or we look back and say, "Well, wait a minute, that's 70 years old. We don't need that anymore. We've got better eyes now with our NDE and better controls." Now, it's like tonight with our technical difficulties that I always marvel that we went to the moon using a slide rule, and every time we have a virtual meeting, somebody's got trouble logging on. So We've come a long way. However, we're still not perfect. And that's the thing I try to explain to the young folks. I've got the welding summit coming up next week. I think we've got 3 people. First time they've ever been in front of a group. So it's trial by fire. And get the young ladies involved in that. And in all facets of engineering and welding and inspection, it's kind of interesting. But you pointed out some of the people, they don't know to learn something new. You were smart enough to do that. We bring it up now. It'll be the 3rd time in the Welding Summit. And I challenge everyone when I kick it off, when we have multiple tracks, different programs, pick something that you don't know anything about and go listen, like you did. And oh my word, I got the feedback I got from not just younger folks, but seasoned veterans. Spurko, he said, "Hey, I didn't know anything about this." And I went, "Wow, that's pretty neat." At the IEC conference it was last August in, where was it? Austin. We had 4 societies, AISC, AWS, and then a couple of the NDE people, and then the old NACE or AMP. And we challenged them, go sit and listen to somebody that you don't know and you don't know what they're talking about. Holy mackerel. You talk about the synergy at lunchtime in the networking. People were wow, I didn't believe I could learn that. I didn't believe I could talk to that guy. We had Rich Campbell. He's a walking encyclopedia. And then we get young people like Scotty's friend Paisley that are competent engineers. They're professional. And just one morning, we had, in fact, that was a weird conference. We had 6 people bail on us at the last minute. One guy had a heart attack. We excused him, but yeah, and we needed a speaker. And I looked at Paisley. It was like 7:45 in the morning. I said, Paisley, what are you doing this afternoon? She goes, well, I'm going to be here. I said, no, you're not. You're going back to your room. You're going to come up with a presentation. I said, you want to play with the big boys? Show us what you got. She had the people eaten out of her hand because she approached a very complex subject and everybody was laughing. And it was in a serious way. Well, that's what we need. I'll stand behind young folks that are doing that. There are some in the Houston area that are just incredible, that are coming up. People would say, oh, they're wet behind the ears. I said, I don't care. They got something to offer. They wouldn't be able to have a job. And everybody can bring something to the table. But there's a responsibility of guys like you and guys like me and some of my old cronies. If you see somebody about to go off the cliff, you walk up and you grab them by the belt and pull them back and say, let's talk about this a little bit. And, don't get in their case or anything. Just, hey, let's talk about it. And they'll never make that mistake again. And I've heard some people that have listened to your podcast say, wow, I didn't know this, and he told us about this, and I'll never do that. Well, you might have just saved somebody's life. I mean, we don't know how close we are sometimes to peril. But I just think it's interesting that the leadership can come from any level. As young as a Paisley or, like me, I keep hoping Wald will come to the welding summit because then I won't be the oldest person there. And we kid each other about that. And, we've known each other I met him in, the summer of 1974, if that tells you anything.
That was a minute ago.
It was. And, we kind of parted paths, and then we came back together on AWS work and then ASME. And you look around the room in these code committee meetings, and it doesn't matter which code. And guys got white hair, gray hair, no hair. They got stuff in their hearts and can barely walk. And you think, whoa, we got to get some younger people in here. But a lot of companies won't support them, and it's expensive to go to those meetings. So, again, that's one of the reasons I really support your effort, because you're bringing a lot of information to the table, and I'm not surprised, and I am, the number of people that don't know that they have access to that. And sometimes we're real good at what we do, but we're not real good at trying to tell everybody what we do.
Right. And that's the thing. I mean, that's kind of why, I really enjoy the podcast. I get to learn with so many other people, and there's just so much information out there. I can't know it all. And that's the great thing is I bring somebody on because I'm interested in that subject. I want to learn more about it. Not one person can know everything. And like I say all the time, the more I learn about welding, the more I realize I don't know anything about welding.
Indeed. Well, and that's why I stress, actually started really stressing it last year, the value of mentors and mentorees. And you reach a point, sometimes quicker than others, where one becomes the other. And Paisley, I use her as an example. She is my mentor for all things process in refinery and things like that. I don't know anything about that. I know how to put pieces of pipe and pressure vessels together. But when you go beyond a single weld and you look at a system, she's sharp as a tack. And I called her up with a problem somebody called me on. I said, hey, have you ever done this? She goes, oh, yeah, about a half a dozen times. I said, okay, start talking. And she goes, well, wait a minute. You're the mentor. I said, no, not right now. I'm the mentoree. You're the mentor. And when you tell people that, it empowers them. That typically, if they're real good, they don't get a big head or anything. They tell you what you need to know, and you go do your job. But I don't think we do that enough of passing the torch, so to speak, and say, hey, well, what do you think? Because, oh, my word, they have a lot to bring to the table. And that's a shame on us. And maybe we're just learning how to do that out of desperation.
It's a possibility. Or like as you get older, you understand the value of knowledge can come from anywhere. A lot of times we think, somebody's got to be older, more wise, more seasoned and stuff like that. But you never know. I mean, there's just so many different people out there involved in the industry, what they're being exposed to on a daily basis. Processes, procedures, what's working, and half the time knowing what not to do or what's not working is just as important. So you can't discount somebody's experience because they haven't been in the welding industry long enough. I mean, there's something to learn from everybody. And like you said, going to the conferences like the IEC conference and the Weld Summit, I mean, you got speakers from all ages, all different backgrounds, different demographics. I got the opportunity to go up to CanWeld, which was another great event. And it was full of engineers. And I was like, I'm just reading the titles of some of these classes. And I'm like, man, I don't know anything about any of this stuff. And I went in there and there was some stuff because I speak welder. I was able to pick up on a lot of it. But they didn't have the hands-on practical approach. They had all theory and classroom and stuff. So I was actually able to go in there and ask intelligent questions from a welder's point of view, which is who they're developing these processes and procedures for, and say, did you guys consider doing this? And they're like, no. But now that you mentioned that, I'm going to go back to the lab, and we're going to attempt that.
Exactly.
It was great. You can learn things from whether it's an engineer or the welder, and half the time nobody wants to listen to the welder, and I think that's a lot of times why welders and engineers don't get along. Not yourself, but the welder. That's just the guy down there pulling the trigger or running the stick. He doesn't know anything. I wrote the procedure. We got the plan together. All the calculations work out. Looks good on paper. Welder doesn't know anything, but they're the ones down there performing the work. So as an engineer, if you kind of open up that dialogue between the welders and the engineers, I think we'd solve a lot more problems a lot faster.
Well, I'll give you one of my secrets. When I go on a job or a plant or something on a consulting gig, the first thing I do is go out and pound the pavement, get clearance, go see the general foreman, whatever, and sit down with the guy and say, look, I'm not here to hang anybody. I want to know what went on and what happened, and you guys know more about it than anybody in this building. Well, it takes a few minutes, and then people start opening up. They'll tell you exactly what went wrong and how they can fix it. Well, you go back into the room with the air-conditioned room with the Susan, you're all nasty, sweaty, and I say, okay, here's the problem, and here's how we got to fix it. And they say, wait a minute, you've only been here a half hour. I said, so? I said, I went out and asked your people. Did anybody here ask your people? Well, why would we ask them? I said, they're the ones doing the work.
They're doing the damn work. They're right there front and center with it. They know exactly what went wrong and how to prevent it.
Exactly. And it's the chain of life, I guess, is number one, you blame the welder. Number two, you blame the filler metal salesman. Number three, you blame the engineer. And last but least, you blame the designer and or management. Now, usually it takes all of those people to really screw something up. But it's all of them. It's not just one. And if you've got a rogue welder or a rogue person here, you get rid of them. I mean, it's that simple. And I've seen people keep people that should have been let go, and they do nothing but create chaos. And
I've never understood that. If you know where the problem is, why not just it's like a cancer, just cut it out. Be done.
Exactly. But it's so important to talk to the working people. And if I may, I'm going to tell a real quick anecdote. I was about, probably 5 or 6 years old. And it was a bridge job. And my grandpa Newell would always take one of the grandsons out to the jobs. He drove these Buicks the size of a battleship. And I couldn't even see out the door. I wasn't tall enough. And we stopped there and we get out and he grabs my arm and we walk up to the edge of a cofferdam that they had the piling driven and the dewatering. Look down in there and Grandpa says, you see that guy down there? The guy's standing up to his waist in mud, mucking the pumps. I said, yeah. He says, you know the difference between that guy down there and us up here? I said, no. I mean, my God, I was 5 or 6 years old. And he says, education. That's the difference. We start walking back to the car. We're about halfway there. And it was about 100 feet away. Halfway there, he grabs my arm again and he says, we're going back over the hole. I said, okay, we'll walk there. You see that guy down there? I said, yeah, we just saw him. He says, don't you ever forget that without that guy down there, we don't have a job up here. And that has stuck with me, which is why I will never belittle a craftsman or a journeyman. or anybody up and down the line. Now, I may not agree with them, but that doesn't mean I don't like them and I don't respect them. But because that's one of our problems. We can't seem to agree to disagree anymore. And that's the way you solve problems. But I've always respected everybody in the food chain. And gee, when you do that, it's a whole lot easier to get things done or find out what happened. And I don't know, and I tell that story, and people go, huh? I say, listen, if you have to go, huh, then you don't get it. And some of these people are in their 60s.
Yeah.
So
I've never understood that. I mean, like growing up, a lot of people told me to get, stay away from blue collar, go to college, get a degree, get an education. You can get an education as a blue collar worker, but there's a lot of folks that look down on people that work with their hands, saying they're not smart enough, they're not educated enough. Okay, well, you go out there and you weld up a bridge so that it doesn't fall apart. You go out there and you wire up that panel to run electricity to people. Go over there and hook up that pump. Put all that stuff in series so that you can get fresh water to your house. How dumb do you think they are? They might not be able to run a spreadsheet, but they can put things together and keep this world turning.
You and I both know welders, forget the other trades, but welders that make 3 times what engineers do, or 4 or 5. It's not about the money anymore. It's about, can you do it? And that's, to me, that's fundamentally important. It's like that. I saw a joke that says, here comes the college graduate engineer in to take his car to the shop, and so the guy can fix it, because he has no clue how to open the hood. And unfortunately, that's too true. Happens too many times. But again, it comes back to this: you respect everyone, call it what you want to. Mentoring, training, familiarization, education. I know Shannon asked me to come out and be a mentor and a judge at one of her weld-offs or competitions. It was homeschooled kids. The Department of Defense on that Project MFG decided, oh, here's this whole group of untapped people, untapped resource. And of course, they're pushing the skilled trades. And each of us mentors, we had 2 teams of 3 each. They were high school age. They were, let's say, not quite high school, but 11 through 17, had never turned on a welding machine. We gave them instruction on using a cutting torch, oxyacetylene, a plasma torch, a side grinder, a sander, and a short arc MIG. We gave them a piece of plate and a very simple blueprint. They're going to build dog houses. I know it sounds funny, but believe it or not, every single team actually had something at the end that resembled a doghouse. The looks on their parents' faces when they came in was unbelievable. So, you mean my child did that? I said, yes. They had no concept. And it's one of those, Shannon has vision like, I've never seen anything like it. But helping these people, and I went to another one she had, and in fact one during race week here, and it's unbelievable how talented. I haven't seen journeymen do what these kids do. Well, students, and these are the community college type of, and we have to cultivate that. And I know our current president, Mike Krupnicki, AWS, he's out there beating the drum, if for no other reason than to make people aware. It's not going to happen unless you step up and see what you can do to make it better. And I get accused, my wife, years ago, or I started mentoring women. She calls it my harem. And guys come up and say, hey, Newell, how come you're always surrounded by all these younger women? You got something going on? No. I said, they said, well, what's the total count now? I said, well, I got a professional engineer in their early 30s. I got 2 in their 40s. I got 2 in their early 50s, and I got 1 in their early 60s. I said, what? I said, well, yeah, I got 1 in her 80s, but I don't count her. I said, what in the world are you doing? I said, think about it. I've got 1 for almost every decade, and now they're all the best of friends. They all talk to each other. They talk about problems and issues and challenges in welding. And they said, yeah, but why did you pick women? I said, well, every one of them is a success in a man's field. And they are doing today what our ladies did to help us in World War II. While the guys were over fighting and getting killed, the ladies were back here building things. They were welding and fitting. I had an aunt that was welding inner bottoms in ships. And she was very proud of that. And oh my God, if she wouldn't use anything less than a 3/16 diameter coated electrode. Baby stuff, But it's that attitude, and these ladies, you don't have to ask them more than once. And they will jump in with both feet and give it everything they've got. But the most important thing they've learned is to say, I don't know, when they don't. But I know somebody that might be able to help. And that to me is an attribute. Somebody comes with me and says, well, I don't know. So, okay, good, let's talk about it. Rather than belittling them. So, oh, you shouldn't be here if you don't know. Well, I don't know everything. You don't know everything. Together, we know a lot of people that could probably help. That's why your podcast, maybe I'm becoming the head of one of your fan clubs, but it's just so important to expose people to these little kernels of knowledge that can really be life changers. Either make you or break you. So I don't know. My wife says I'm an old fuddy-duddy. Yeah, okay, I am. And I'm setting my ways on some things. But way back when, 40 years ago, when I worked at the Electric Power Research Institute, figuring out how to fix boiling water reactor piping systems, we would all laugh because people say, oh, this is nuclear. It's all special. Nah. If it's round and the hole's in the middle, the minute the welder lowers it, he doesn't care. He just wants paid. And if you walk up to a joint or a problem like that and think, well, it's just metal, the welder doesn't care. But you explain things to him. I was amazed, Jason, back my new construction days, had a welder that they said he was a crackerjack. But he'd be welding a vert, and on the left side, he'd have slag, and on the right side, it'd be crystal clear. So I took him in the shooting booth. So he'd never seen film. As a matter of fact, have found for years, most welders have never seen a cross-section. They have no idea what a weld looks like in cross-section. You show it to them, they go, oh, did I make that mess? I say, yeah, you did. Oh, well, I can fix that. I say, okay. Again, that's just kind of learning and familiarization. So his name was, we'll call him Don. And I said, Don, what's the deal here? He goes, wait a minute. He's pointing this way, and then he's pointing this way. I said, when did you have your eyes checked last? And the foreman, or the general foreman and the steward says, well, we got a program for that. I said, get him down and get his eyes checked. Don't you know he needed correction in just one eye? He got correction, and he was welding up a storm. No problem. No more rejects for about 4 years. So some of these things, you just have to recognize it and say, no, wait a minute. There may be another root cause to this and not him. Now, if the whole thing was full of stuff, well, that'd be different. But, when it's localized, well, that's the welding engineer and or the inspector should say, hey, wait a minute, there's something going on here, and this isn't right. And don't belittle the welder for it. So, I don't know. Some of us are just recognizing situations for what they are. But we talk about welders. Oh, my word. The lawsuits that I participate in, and usually it's like this, who's at fault, both sides. But we have got as big, if not bigger problem in supervision. People that actually understand the work and are experienced in conducting the work. Then the same goes for engineers. But supervision, I know AWS has got some programs they're working on. If the instructor knows what they're talking about, yeah, there's a chance that people coming out of that will benefit. But it's all the instructor. That's one of my benefits in college. All my instructors came from industry. First, had a heart attack that says, we'll go teach. And, well, if they weren't making atomic bombs. I actually had one like that. But, so, these guys had been there, done that. You couldn't argue with them. Why? Because they knew more about it than you would ever know. But the day came one day when one of my professors, who happened to be my advisor, called me. He says, Bill, I need some help. I said, what do you mean? He says, give me the Cliff Notes version about flux core. We were welding up nuclear containment vessels with flux core, and doing very well. And he says, I got this contract from the Coast Guard, and I don't know a whole lot about it. Now, he was Mr. Submerged Arc, other processes, fluxes and slags and all that. I said, okay, here's the bottom line. And we walked through it and all that. He goes, wow. And I said, I don't know whether to be scared to death or flattered that a guy that can darn near walk on water is calling me to figure out how to do something. And he was a kind of a grandfather type, and he just laughed. He says, yeah, well, you've done your job when the student becomes the teacher. I've never forgotten that either, because it's so, so true. It's my bit, mentoree becomes mentor, and then you can't tell the difference of who was who. Well, when you get to that point, you start making a difference. Our good friend Scotty is that way. He can play both roles. He laughs. He says, oh, yeah, you're my mentor. I said, listen, I've learned as much from you as you've learned from me, because there's a lot I don't know. When I don't, I'll call you if I think you do know. And then he gets all embarrassed. I've never seen him blush, but he appreciates that, and he deserved it. And you're going to be in trouble, because I'm going to call you one of these days. Okay, Jason, what do you think? No, I will. I know it's going to happen, because you see too many people, you talk to too many people. Lord knows that the students that come through, you hear a little bit of everything, I'm sure. And that's how we get better. Instead of belittling, we learn, we listen, and go forward. I mean, I've had a guy, in fact, the guy that was one of Paisley's mentors in Canada, called me one day and said, hey, I need some help on something. Now, I consider him a mentor, big time. And he goes, no, I need some help on this. I said, well, between the two of us, we can probably figure it out. Well, we did. And then we both started laughing, because we were thinking the same thing. Here's these two old white-haired guys that didn't know the answer, but together they came up with something. And I said, well, hopefully it'll work. But you give it your best shot. And I just wish people would let the younger ones or the less experienced ones be involved in things like that, so that they too can start sharing and giving back.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break. This segment of the Arc Junkies podcast is brought to you by Everlast Welders. Upgrade your welding game today with Everlast Welders. Their affordable, high-quality machines come with a 5-year warranty and fast shipping. From home hobbyists to small business owners, Everlast has you covered. And right now, listeners of the Arc Junkies podcast can get a free Nova foot pedal and TIG torch upgrade when you buy any machine that comes with a stock foot pedal. Just use Arc Junkies in the comment section at checkout. Visit everlastgenerators.com to get started. Everlast Welders. Weld mean, weld green. Now let's get back to the show. That's one of the first things that I did when I got into a position as a supervisor, is I started bringing over the young welders, young iron workers. I said, look, you're going to learn about this eventually. I'd start showing them how to read blueprints. And I would just take them under my wing. Here's how you do this. I wanted to pass that information off, because at the end of the day, that's going to make me as a foreman look better, because all of my workers are more productive when they're more educated. You got a lot of guys out there that, they roll up the prints and they don't leave them sitting around. They carry those prints with them everywhere. Roll them up, stick them under their arm. They're the only ones because they need to be the ones that knows what's going on. No. Share that. Build up everybody else. Find that, that young hard charger in your crew that's, they're there every day. They're always constantly looking for something else to do because they're getting work done. Take them and teach them and show them this stuff and make them better. It's going to make the industry better. It's like I tell everybody, I want more educated welders. I want better welders out here. I mean, that's part of what I do on the podcast, is to help educate and inspire the next generation of welders. And if I can inspire somebody to put in a little bit more hood time or crack open a book or do some more research on something, I want better educated welders, because I rely on the stuff and my family relies on the stuff that these welders produce on a daily basis. I don't want people out there doing a half-assed job when it comes to welding. I mean, that's a critical skill.
Well, there's another facet to this. Is okay, I sit on the codes and all that, and yes, I'm all for proper paperwork, and it sure helps if you're trying to go back and figure out what happened. Maybe it didn't go bad, but what did happen. And I remember a long time ago at a nuke, the best welder I had, in fact, that I've ever seen. Any process, didn't matter the position, didn't matter whether it was pipe, plate, tubing, whatever. He could hang by his heels 150 feet in the air. It didn't matter to him. Signed his check with an X because he couldn't read or write. He spent his time under a hood instead of in a classroom, okay, just because of his family situation. And naturally, QA, QC, they were in my case. Oh, you can't do that. You can't allow because he can't read the WPS. I said, he doesn't have to. I remember the NRC resident, he happened to be in earshot and heard the argument. It was an argument. It wasn't a debate. And he says, what's going on here? I said, well, they want me to get rid of so-and-so. And he said, wait a minute, that's the best welder you got. I said, he says, how many repairs has he had? It was 6.5 years that I was there. Well, I was there 7, but I said, never. And he was always on RT work or 100% UT. And the NRC guy looks at the inspector and says, guys, go find somebody else to harass. He says, some people have the gift and some don't. Well, those that do, you want to put your arm around it and do everything you can. And we found real quick when we were making flaw blocks, we couldn't let him get near him because he didn't know how to make a mistake. I'm sure you've run into welders like that. That no matter what they touched, they did it right. And then there were those that I'm surprised they can find their way from their truck to the jobs, But I don't know. Some of this, and they don't teach it in school. We don't teach it in the tech schools or the community college, and we sure as hell don't teach it in university. Is the human factor, the human element, to understand the people you're working with. Now, yeah, I'm not saying you got to be a psychologist or anything like that, but just understand that, hey, sometimes things just don't work. And I've seen too often, especially on critical work and nuclear, a guy's just messing up. They'll mess up on Friday and they'll mess up on Monday because they had a fight with the old lady over the weekend or the girlfriend or whatever, or they got hammered Thursday night and can barely find their way to the job site on Friday. And a guy like that, I'd always say, the foreman or general would say, can't you find something for him to do in this warehouse? Don't let him go out there and endanger himself. And they said, well, what, you going to look the other way? I said, yes, he's too valuable. We got to keep him. So let's help him or find out what the problem is. And that's, at least in construction world, that's very, very real. I know manufacturing has its own set of issues, and I don't claim to know about manufacturing. I couldn't make 1,000 of anything if I had to. I'm usually onesie twosie, but that's just the different direction I took when I got out of school. So I envy you being able to be around the students, and I'm sure they're all ages. I learned the hard way many years ago. We had a welding school, and it's a great way to lose $1 million. I mean, it was right at the recession, I think 2007-ish, something like that, 2008. And we found, well, we could have gotten grants and all that, but we didn't want to follow the rules. We wanted to teach people to weld. So we took it on the chin, but we were turning out ASME pipe welders in less than 6 weeks. But each welder welded a ton of coupons. They'd weld and weld and weld, and we had them. Oh, Lord, it was like Hitler was our instructor, or our lead instructor. The best I've ever seen in that area. And he'd been fired by every major company in the world because he'd tell the HR people to go take a hike. You want a welder, or do you want to check off a box? And off air, I'll tell you who it was. You probably know him. Well, we've got people like that out there that just they just know what to do and can show people how to do it. If they can't tell them, they show them. And a lot of these people, they can't listen, but they'll watch. And I'm sure you see that in the booth. You got different ways to communicate with people.
Yeah, everybody's got a different learning style, and that was a cool thing when I got into teaching, because I could tell a group of 15 people, and you get comfortable as an instructor. This is how I teach. This is how I explain things. Well, the problem is you can say it to 15 different people. 3 of them may have identified with what you just said. The other 12, they're completely lost. So that's why you got to go booth to booth, and then you have to figure out how to work with different learning styles. That was the biggest learning curve for me when I got into education, because I can't explain it the same way that I explain it to you, that I do to Scott, that I do to Paisley, that I do to this guy and that guy. Everybody's got a different way that they learn things. So I started teaching with analogies, and certain kids, I was here, just watch me, or put your hands on top of my hands, or I'm going to hold your hands. You got to be able to get that tactile feedback. And so it just, everybody's got a different learning style. But like you said, it's the human element. You got to know how to talk to people. It was the same thing on a job site. And when I got out of the military, I got right into construction. I never yelled at anybody. I mean, that's what they do in the military. They just yell at you and you jump and you go do it. Well, not everybody's got that same level of discipline. You go out there and, you yell at Mike over there. Mike's liable to, come chasing after you with a spud wrench. So you got to know how to talk to people. And there's different management styles and leadership styles. And you got to figure out the best way to get through to people and communicate. That's the biggest thing, is we've got so many different modes of communication and we don't talk to each other. Face to face, you got Zoom, you got phone calls, text messages, emails, and we don't convey the information we need to convey to make sure everybody's being successful.
Well, I belong to that club where I invoked the question of welder's ability and ran him off site and went out of my car at the end of the shift, and there was a railroad tie through the windshield of my pickup. And it happened to be an iron worker that I ran off. And I was basically on top of the desk of the general foreman the next morning. I said, "Do you know anything about a railroad tie that flew through the air and ended up through the windshield of my pickup?" He said, "Yeah, I heard something about that." I said, "Well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to go out there at the end of this shift, and it better be fixed. And you're going to make sure it gets fixed. And this is the last time we'll address this." Well, it was. But the next time it happened, and I learned from it, I said, Newell, you weren't too smart. They could have killed you or pulled a gun on you. That was back in those days, But the next time it had to happen, the first person I went and talked to was the general foreman and the steward. I said, "Hey, is there any reason you guys know why this fella's having all these problems?" And the steward said, "He's a jerk." I said, "Well, okay. But tell you what, I don't want to invoke the code because he's kind of borderline. He just didn't blow it all together. But with a little help and a little practice," I said, "I'll tell you what you ought to do, or what I would recommend. You take one of your better guys that can train, and we've got an extra booth in the test shop, and we're all going to turn and look the other way. Take a day, 2, 3 days, get him back up to speed, and then let's retest him." Well, they did. He became one of their better welders. So I guess you got to, like the Kenny Rogers song, know when to hold them and know when to fold them. I know that just running a guy off without getting the other people involved is not the way to do it. And but it again, an object lesson. And when you see somebody turn around, do a complete 180, you feel good about that. And he actually came up and thanked me. He says, "I don't know how you did it or what you did, but thanks. My family thanks you. I needed this job." I said, "Well," "you were borderline, so we let your fellow local help you out." And they did, and the rest is history. And that's maybe harder to do in manufacturing, but as you know, in construction, you can get away with a lot of latitude. And if management is working with supervision and the craft supervision, it'll either make you or break you. So I don't know. Those are things you learn the hard way, at least the first time. And I admit that. I'm not proud of that, but at least I learned. I didn't have any more railroad ties through my car or my window. Indeed. But it's like I say, I still get excited about the industry. And it goes back to, hey, if it's round and the holes in the middle, I can probably handle it. And big plate too. These guys, they talk about, well, we're doing this with a laser. We're going to do powder additive manufacturing. I said, well, we called it well built up 40 years ago. I said, we put down tons. What do you mean tons? I said, you ever rebuild a steam rotor for a steam turbine? It's not unusual to put a ton per disc. Another, well, yeah, but you didn't use a computer. I says, we didn't, but some people did. And so some of this is, we just change the name and it becomes fancy, and then we get a new budget. But welding is welding. to a point. Now, there's some of this new stuff, there's handheld lasers and things like that. Phenomenal technology. There are, like a lot of things, you got to follow the rules with safety and everything. But man, if I'd have had one of those to weld up bellows in a power plant, going through penetrations, the real thin stuff, that'd been the cat's meow. And we used this new stuff called plasma welding. And at that time, it was back in the 70s. And everybody, we're afraid, we never heard of this. Well, guys, we're going to use it because we can't do it any other way or we'll screw it up. And that's kind of an interesting. Necessity is the mother of invention. People say, no. It's real easy to say no. But it takes somebody with experience and moxie to say, yeah, let's try it. And I had a boss. He was the lead guy that built mock-ups for the Nimitz-class carriers and nuclear propulsion systems at Newport News for years. And he became our project manager. And I come up with an idea in a meeting, and I said, well, yeah, I'd like to try this. We'll do this because this is this. And he'd look at me, and he'd go, Newell, you are out of your mind. I said, well, maybe. Then he'd grin and say, okay, how are we going to do this? He was one of those kind of guys that he could see right through the crap, and he'd say, yeah, this might work. Let's give it a shot. Well, he knew how to say yes. And I'd noticed a lot of those guys were that way, that really made it up. I don't think the word no is in their vocabulary. And too many people just say no because that's the easy thing to do, which is why I'm in trouble all the time, I guess.
Do you know David Kilburn with Lincoln Electric? You ever met him?
I have, yes.
Super smart guy, but I love his mentality. Let's turn it up. Let's see what we can get this thing to do. We know what the technology is. We know what it's capable of, but what's its limitations? Because once you start implementing new technology, and that's the thing is everybody's still stuck welding the same way we've been doing it for 20, 30 years because, that's the way we've always done it. Why change? But implementing new technology, being open to having new technology, that's one of the biggest things in a welding program. You get a lot of instructors in there. They don't want to change anything that, outside of what they've been doing for the past 20 years because they're comfortable. They don't want to play around with a laser. They don't want to get into automation. They don't want to get into working with cobots or anything like that or rotators. You've got to be receptive to this technology because at the end of the day, we've got to build things bigger, faster, cheaper, and better than we always have. You can't continuously do it with the old ways. So, you guys were doing additive manufacturing 40 years ago, but now it's more efficient. We can use powdered metal fillers. We can use all this cool technology and 6-axis rotating machines and build things from a print, just out of solid weld metal and then machine back the areas that we don't need because it's faster and it's cheaper than, pouring a cast or something to that effect. But you got to be receptive to incorporating the new technology. You look at some of these welding machines and all the advanced processes and, new modes of metal transfer and modified, previous modes that we've always been accustomed to. People don't want to do it because they're afraid. Well, I don't want to run STT on there. We're just going to run that thing short circuit. Okay, you can keep pulling whiskers out on the inside. Switch over to STT or RMD or CMT or any of that stuff and make work faster, make work better. But it seems like that's the last place that people want to. And you probably see this more often than I do, but that's the last place that a lot of these companies want to invest any money is in the equipment and the training for the welders because we're just going to keep doing what we've always done because it's always worked. I don't want to take a risk on bringing in, new equipment, new ways of doing things, and, we'll fall behind in production. What if it doesn't work out? Well, what if it does and you double your profit by the end of the year?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I'm in a case right now where the company bid this job, a stainless job, TIG root, flux core fill, piece of cake. Could just absolutely make hay. Well, they got in the job, and after the job award, the AE was a foreign concern, actually from Europe, and they came in, they wanted to use all this high-tech equipment, and high-tech TIG and high-tech plasma and some other things, and nobody knew how to do it. They sent them to Germany to learn. They had 3 days to train on it, and nobody there knew how to run it. Come back here, and it was failing miserably. And I'm there, okay, I'm all for modern technology, but you don't take something from another land that nobody's ever seen and bring it to your land without the time, effort, and money to do proper training. And by the way, you got to have some people that know how to train. And it's so, I've always been an advocate of automation, but there are times when no, that's if we can do it, fine. If we've got the time, effort, and money to train, I agree with you 100%. But if you don't, better go to the old tried and true, or you're heading to the courtroom when it's all said and done. And that's a hard thing to explain to people. So I don't know it, but I look at the new machines, and I do remember. Now we had some real headaches when the STT came out and the RMD, and it took us probably a year to figure out the reason if we qualified a procedure and it worked, and then we take it to a job site or we take it to a shop, if there was more than one of those things in the building, they started talking to each other. The big boys, the designers, we'll just call them, and we'll be colorblind here, no one considered that they were nothing but a big signal generator. And they were literally cross-talking. And we did an EPRI group call at Scotty's place, or Maverick. It was Maverick then. And we had new equipment lined up, and all of a sudden, two of them started talking to each other, and then they were all talking to each other. We had to shut everything down, ground everything out, and then one by one, bring them back online until we found the one that was causing all the problems, and we got it out of there. So, but the only reason I knew that, or just even do that, is because of what happened, 15 years earlier, where we all got burned. I knew people got fired for that. Oh, you screwed up. You don't know what you're doing. No. Then they came out and they shielded them and had special shielding packages, and today they're pretty good. But in fact, a tech school, big expansion here in North Carolina, I think they had 140 students and a waiting list for another 150. So they've got the money appropriated to build this brand new thing. So I said to the guy in charge, or the chairman, I says, how many buses are you going to feed this thing with? Electrical buses. He looked at me and he goes, you're trying to tell me something, aren't you? I said, yep. And he had a robotics welding competition there. It was unbelievable with the students. I said, you want your robots on one bus, you want your waveform controlled equipment on another, and the old-fashioned, good old stuff on a third, so that they won't talk to each other. And he says, well, did you notice we have red stuff at one end of the building and blue stuff at the other? I said, exactly. And that's the way you got to do it until you figure out which units are misbehaving in the sandbox. And it's real. And people, oh, no, the vendors say, oh, no, that's not true. No, it is true. And we're smart, but sometimes we're not as smart as we think we are. So I don't know. Again, we're getting better. The technology's getting better, but along with that, we got to have guys like you that realize, hey, there's a price to pay for technology, and it's got to be training and supervision. And I'm not so sure the supervision and training isn't more important than the welder training. If the supervisor knows what he's doing, he can get the welder to do it. Well, usually. And we don't spend a lot of time on that.
No, and that's why I always pride companies that they spend that time, they spend the money, they provide the resources to train their people. Because, I mean, like, that probably is the last place that most people want to invest money is in their employees, because they'll leave. But, if you're treating them well enough, they're going to stay. That was one of the greatest benefits I had when I was working at the school is, hey, I want to go to the IEC conference. Okay, cool. Fill out your travel form, submit it, done. Okay, I want to go over here to the underwater diving training center, because they knew that everything that I was going out to learn, I could then come back and teach that to my students, and we'd be a little bit more competitive when we started recruiting people. I'm teaching things in my program that other programs they're not teaching because their instructors may not have had that education. They didn't have the opportunities to go out and learn that stuff. But likewise, when you get into manufacturing and construction, if you want to start implementing new stuff or you want to train better people, start providing training opportunities for your employers. I just linked up with a company the other day. I'm going in Monday to work with them. I'm going to do some consulting and training for them. They want me to develop a training program so that they can get some sort of accreditation. It's part of, something that they have to have. So I'm going to set up different training courses when it comes to, welding, showing them how to do in-service inspections and all this stuff and different welding processes to expedite some of the stuff they're doing. But the company's taking a step in the right direction because they're paying an outside consultant to come in and train their people and skill them up.
Yeah, that it's unfortunately many companies that the top person is not an old construction hand or an engineer or field hand or even shop hand. They look at that, all that is overhead. Oh no, it's overhead. We got to eat that. No, it'll pay you dividends down the road in a heartbeat. And they say, oh, that's an intangible. I said, well, yeah, it is. But if you don't have the people that can do it, you're going to lose your tail. Oh yeah, but how do you know? I said, well, look around at your competitors. I said, you put 10 competitors in the room and ask them the same question, you're going to get the same answer. Yeah, I should have done that. And it's uncanny. It's I always tell people, I said, well, if a dumb guy like me can figure it out, why can't the smart people? I mean, a lot of this is common sense. Whoops, that's something that's missing in a lot of areas. But I think you've given me an idea for not this summit, if I still keep doing them. Next time, last summit we had a panel of women, all ages from 20 to 85, and everybody in between. And we wanted to see what was going to happen. Well, everybody was enamored. I mean, because these women, they were asked tough questions and they gave tougher answers. Wonderful. So we've got another one this year at the Welding Summit. I'm thinking, because we did a town hall meeting in 2018 at the Welding Summit. We had 5 educators, people that were from the tech schools, that sort of thing. And then we had 5 employers. And we had some prepared questions. And the banter back and forth was fascinating about, and the students. And I remember one young lady, she stood up, she says, well, I go and I graduate and I got a certification and everything. And the first thing I go to a company, they say, oh, well, you got to have 3 to 5 years experience before we'll even think about hiring you. And she says, what am I supposed to do? And this guy, he was a vice president of an enormous EPC concern in Houston. They're all over the world. He stood up and he says, did my company do that? She goes, oh yeah, they were the first to say that. She goes, you're hired. He said, you come see me. She said, we're going to change that. He said, we can't have that kind of thinking. And he was told in no uncertain terms by all the people around him with these companies. Said, oh yeah, she's right. We've said that, but nobody will listen. Well, what concerned me of the 5 educators, I asked them, I says, from the crowd, I says, well, how many of you teach to a WPS or use a WPS as a vehicle to show the students? Because anybody that goes out and welds on code work is probably going to at least hear about one. I may not see one, but they hear about it. Only 2 of the 5 raised their hand. Say, oh yeah, we use this as part of our curriculum. And, he says, you can teach a whole course from a WPS. I said, yes, exactly. The other 3 wanted to know what that meant. And they were the head of the school. Now, I don't know about you, but that spoke volumes to me. If they don't know, what in the world was coming out the door? They're graduating students. It wouldn't be the students' fault. I mean, if the people in charge didn't know, I'm there. Hello, and I was kind. The employers, or most of them were construction and manufacturing, they let them have it with both barrels. So, well, no wonder we don't hire your people. You don't teach them anything. And it was shocking, yet it was rewarding that we hit the nail on the head, but it identifies some things. So what I think we ought to do is have a panel with guys like you on it to, like a serious panel discussion, not one of these fluffy ones. Just one with hard-hitting questions and back and forth for the betterment of the industry. Because in those open discussions like that, it's amazing the questions that come out of the audience. All age groups, too, all experience levels. So it's you just put that in my mind. Sorry.
Write that down.
No, I'll remember that because of this podcast. But it's sometimes just little things like that, and the people walk away and say, "Wow, I didn't know that." And
you got to start having those conversations. Like when I was teaching welding at the college level, that's one thing. I only had students Monday through Thursday, so on Friday I was out beating the pavement talking to employers. Hey, what do you need? Well, they got to have this, that, the other thing. A lot of it. A lot of times what they have in the job description. All right, ask them for a job description. Okay, 5 to 7 years worth of work experience. Well, I'll tell you what. If they can come in here and pass your test, would you hire them? Oh yeah, we got guys. 10 years of welding experience can't pass these tests. Okay, cool. What's your test look like? I'm not going to train them to teach the test, but I'm going to train them to run those processes at those settings. I had certain companies. They would not only give me a copy of their WPS. I had to sign NDAs. But they'd give me a copy of their welding procedure specification. They would donate scrap material, and they would say, have your welders practice on this. If they can pass this test, we'll hire them. And that's exactly what we did. And then it got to a point where they were giving me the actual test samples. I'd have the students weld them right there in the class. We sent them out to a third-party inspector. They would do X-ray and dye pen tests. They'd send the results directly over to the company, along with the original sample. They'd run that sample through their machine. They'd do all their testing on there. And if it passed, they'd hire that student right out of the program. So we'd start, I'd start administering weld tests for specific companies, the students that really wanted it, probably 2 to 3 weeks before they would graduate.
Well, you don't know this, but you're a pace setter. Because we get around to many of the schools and whatever. And I've run into one here in central North Carolina that blows me away. They have everything from oxy-fuel to robotics and everything in between. They're the ones that are building the new facility and all that. And they invited me to be on the welding advisory board. I said, well, okay. I said, that's a nice honor. So I get in there. And the reason their school is so good and how they have 2 to 3 jobs for every student that graduates, they get industry in and they ask, what do you need? What do you want? What should we change? They said, the difference is they listen to what the people are saying. Some of these, I've been in others, sit there and they say, oh, well, we can't do that because of this or that. I don't know, we can't do that. And I'm there, guys, that's your customer. And say, oh, well, we're not selling anything. I said, what the heck you aren't? It defies understanding of why it's the difference between schools that are huge successes and those that scrape by. And it's like Dr. Perlan and his school up in near Chicago, Peoria. You know what's in Peoria. They make big yellow things.
Yeah, it's all farm country up there. Well, farming equipment.
Well, it's CAT.
Mm-hmm.
The only processes he teaches are flux core, MIG, and sub-arc. Why? That's all CAT wants. And what CAT wants, that's what CAT gets, and they keep equipment, sample, you name it. They want for nothing in those areas. And I say that with respect. Well, the same thing with this program in central North Carolina. In that town is a big CAT facility. They hire 80 students a year. Yeah. And so do you think they have a little bit of a say-so? And it's not that they're being evil or anything. It's just they say, well, what do you need? So they tell them, okay, because if it's good enough for them, it's probably good enough. I saw some small fabricators say, oh, yeah, we benefit from that because we get the ones that can't quite cut it over there, but they're good enough for what we're doing. And then they get better with experience. Well, I don't see anything wrong with that. That just seems to be smart. Well, you said you pounded the pavement on Fridays. You were doing the same doggone thing.
Well, it just seemed like the logical thing because at the end of the day, like my performance was based off placement. If I could train, 40, 50 welders a year, but if none of them are getting hired, that's going to reflect very poorly on me. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to stack the deck in my favor. I'm going to set myself up for success by setting my students up for success. They're not planning on traveling. They're going to stay within this area. So within a 20-mile radius, I'm going to go visit these welding shops and say, hey, what are you looking for? What processes do you do here? Fabrication, this, that, and the other thing. Tell me everything you guys need. They, a lot of times they'd give me a plant tour. I'd go around, start looking at things. Okay, I could start implementing that in my shop and, set this up for the students, teach them how to read blueprints. And like, I just made well-rounded welders that would do really good when they graduated applying in that area. And a lot of, then I started setting things up to where employers could actually perform the interviews at my school. They'd come in, we'd give them the conference room. Hey, I got 5-6 people that are interested in welding for you. And I'd send them into the office there or the conference room to do their interview. And I'd say, hey, take these weld samples with you. This is the type of, stuff that they're working on. Show them your weld samples. And then some of them, they'd even say, hey, can you do a weld test right now? Yeah, booth's open. Come in here. You can watch them. Bring your
They had some students bring some samples in that meeting that I was in and pass them around. And one old guy, he in the fab shop, he goes, "You're hired." And he said, "Well, what you do?" He said, "You're hired." Another guy says, "No, I want them." I said, "I'll see you and raise you one." And I mean, hell, they got in a bidding war in the meeting. Now, of course, the chairman or the head guy, he was beaming from ear to ear because that's exactly the kind of atmosphere he wanted to have. And they all get along, the businesses and all that, but it was comical. And but it proved a valuable point. And like you say, they brought in their not ashtrays, but paperweights. And actually pretty good. The kid was talking about it. He said, "Well, this is," I said, "It's not that. It can't be 60-10. There's no spatter." "Oh, I'm sorry. No, you're right. It was 70-18. I said, "Okay, now we're talking." He looked at him and he goes, "Well, how'd you know?" I said, "This isn't the first weld I've ever looked at." I mean, he was amazed. I don't know. But anyway, we're not going to solve all the problems here tonight, or today. But again, thank you for doing what you do. And thank you for reaching out to a multitude of people. It can't hurt. And it's going to help.
It's folks like you that are willing to pass that information off to the next generation. I mean, that's what we were talking about at the IEC last time. You're like, I got a lot of knowledge up here that I want to get that out there. And, for you being willing to pass that information off, because once you're out of the industry, you take up fishing or something like that, you turn your cell phone on to do not disturb, you quit taking them phone calls. Somebody's got to know what Bill knows.
Well, and that's one of the reasons I'm doing what I'm doing with those young ladies. And of course, they're all younger than I am, but it's because then there's somebody that somebody can go to and say, I do turn the cell phone off for a while. They'll know where to find me. And it's like, I don't know. I can't cut myself off from the world. That'd tear me up unless I just physically can't. But some of this is not rocket science. And you start asking questions, simple questions. Like I was kidding you on the phone. Is the ground hooked up?
Yep.
We have heard that in far too many times. They say, "Well, the weld looks like it's crap, and it's of this, and it's uneven, and this." I said, "Will you go out in the shop and see if the ground is hooked up?" About half the time they get back on the phone and say, "Sorry, you're right. How did you know?" I said, "Well, the fundamentals, the basic fundamentals." And
that's a funny thing. Even, as long as I've been welding, I always forget to hook my ground clamp up. I look over like, why is this thing not? Oh, yeah. Duh.
Yeah, indeed.
Yep.
Indeed.
Or turn the water cooler on. If you're getting ready to run some TIG welding, I just had that conversation with a new group of students last week. I said, before you guys get into anything, turn the water cooler on before you turn on the welding machine. Before you plug in that foot pedal, turn the water cooler on. And sure enough, man, you get into it. Me and my buddy Juan were developing a welding procedure a couple weeks ago. We both know better. We run that equipment in that shop all the time. We get to BSing and everything, and I'm writing down lot numbers and heat numbers on the filler metal, and he's prepping his material, and we're BSing. He's like, "All right, you ready to do this?" I said, "Yep, go ahead, let it run, man." He puts a weld in there. I was like, "Man, that's slick." Cut it apart, look at it. Okay, we got it, and showing the welders what's on the inside of the weld. He knew exactly what to fix. The second time we ran that thing, about halfway through, I was like, "What in the hell is that smell?" And I turn over, I see a little bit of smoke, and then, damn it, we forgot to turn the water cooler on. It happens.
Well, my famous trick is I'll go back here in the shop, and I'll go to do some government work, as I call it, and I forget to turn the gas on, and then I melt it or destroy the tungsten. And I think everyone has, but it's It's interesting that the basic fundamentals, it's hard to teach them because if you're teaching them, you kind of run out of time to do some of the other stuff, and it's important too. I like your style where you go around to the booth. That's where you help students with fundamentals. You say, oh, have you considered this? Have you considered that? I was at a competition. Of course, we had to keep our mouths shut here local. And a young lady, she says, Mr. Newell, I know you can't talk to us about this, but would you look at my weld and tell me what you do? I said, well, I can do that. I looked at it and I said, I'd go find a 9-inch wheel and grind the hell out of it. She goes, what? I says, yeah, and I'll tell you, I think I know what the cause is. She says, what? I says, you're walking the cup. She says, well, we're told we have to. I've fired guys for walking the cup, but then I'm old school. Because you lose gas coverage, you don't get the penetration, this, that, and the other. Well, I walked away, didn't say a word. She won the competition. She came up and gave me a great big hug. And I thought, oh, shit, this doesn't look good. The head instructor, or the guy, he comes up to me and he says, did you cheat and teach her? I tell her something. I said, no. She just asked me what I would do. I said, get out a big grinder and get it out of there. He said, what else did you tell her? I said, well, I can see why you did it. You're walking the cup. Quit doing that and you'll do fine. And he looked at me and he goes, wait a minute. Are you that guy that fires people for doing that? I said, oh, my reputation precedes me. He said, yeah. Clear back when you were at Duke Power back in the 70s. I said, yeah, that's true. And I said, and I told him why. And he goes, oh, Scotty Witowski. He was telling me that 80 or 90% of the rejects in their test operation are lack of fusion, on the monster coupon. I says, well, tell a couple of them they can't walk the cup anymore. See what happens. Bing, 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 bing. They all passed. He says, son of a gun. He says, I never thought about that. I said, well, I'm just saying, I'm just one man. That's one man's opinion. And they are now discouraging that, I believe.
It makes sense because when you walk the cup, you got to lean the torch back so far. So now you're taking all that amperage, you're trying to penetrate into the joint, and you're skimming it across the surface.
Right. Exactly.
That's why a lot of times, especially on like a cap, they lean that cup way back, they stick that tungsten out, and they sharpen it super, super sharp, and you get that wide fan, and it looks beautiful, but you're flowing metal right up on top of it. You're not penetrating. You got to get that. That's why when you're TIG welding, you got that 5 to 10 degree angle pointed into the joint because I want depth and I want to fuse deeply.
And if I'm welding chrome mollies, I want interbead tempering from the heat of welding to help me get. So if the heat treater doesn't do a really good job, you're still okay. And people just don't understand that. It's pretty simple. If you look at the reason I would say that, and that others would say that no. It's a matter of we want to use everything at our disposal to get a good joint. And that's one of the things, the heat of welding. That's how we were able to weld P91 without post-weld heat treat. But you've got to have rigorous control over your interbead tempering. How elevated preheat and all that. And people say, oh, you can't do that. I said, well, we've been doing it. We've been doing it for years. Not legally, but it's been done. Well, as a matter of fact, the turbine rotors for 30 years now, at least, use P91 or the B9, then now B91, no heat treat, because they couldn't do the proper P91 heat treat or it would screw up the rotor steel. The temperature would be too high. And they found that, we'll use high energy TIG and, keep that torch pointed in the right direction and interbead tempering and away we go. And there's some of those rotors were repaired 30, 35 years ago, and they're still running. So I guess that didn't work. So,
ain't broke, don't fix it.
Well, indeed, and I'm a firm believer in that. And I've heard some welder inspectors and some folks. They said, well, what do you think of this weld? And I said, well, I've seen prettier. And they said, well, what do you mean? I said, you would not believe the welds I've taken out of power plants and refineries and places that have been in service for 50, 60, 70 years. You wouldn't use them to build your doghouse. Terrible. But It meant that they probably ran it within the design spec, the material wasn't overstressed, and it lasted. And I told him, I says, it's just like you go to the dance and there's an ugly guy and there's an ugly girl. Well, nobody wants to dance with the ugly girl, but she can dance. She can really cut a rug. Don't want to dance with the ugly guy, but boy, he sure can dance. I said, well, that's the way a weld is. It doesn't have to be pretty to be serviceable. Now, yes, we have criteria, and usually if it looks good, it is good, as long as it's just that way all the way through, but it doesn't have to be pristine. Now, nuclear is a different story. It's got to be baby butt smooth and all those things so we can do our interim inspections and all that. But and the film, you can't mask anything, or on power, it's kind of, oh yeah, it's probably all right, and we going down the road. But so it's just fitness for service, and that's a danger too. I've been work with so many industries. I have to sit back and say, okay, what am I looking at here? Which industry am I looking at? Which code is involved? And Rich Campbell, he gave a talk up at IC about that, or down at IC, that, oh my word, you guys, you got to see, what code am I supposed to be working to? Half the room didn't know. And we're there, guys, gals, that's the first thing you got to figure out, because that'll dictate your acceptance criteria. And you weld to that. And it's amazing, but nobody ever told them. I don't know. It is funny. The old white-haired guys, Walt was there, I was there, we were all there and telling them, guys, this is the way you got to do it. And they're there, huh? Well, why? So, do you want it to fail, or do you want it to be around for a while? And it just, oh well, you've seen it. You walked out. You've had students leave, and some of them probably come back occasionally and all. And if you're around long enough, you will see anything and everything. But I don't know. The industry somehow will survive, but it won't be pretty. Just because we don't, what are we, 400,000 welders short now?
Yeah, I think the other day I looked it up. I think it was like 330, somewhere in there.
Well, I think we got better there. But everybody's going to age out.
Yeah. But I know I did notice that the average age of a welder is dropping. I think it went from like 65 to 44 or something like that. And it might even be a little bit lower now. Well, I mean, that's a good thing. But we're also getting people from other industries that, they have some age that are getting into welding, like a second career or changing careers.
Yes. And, because the money's good. If you've got credentials, you can kind of write your own ticket. And same with inspectors. If a good inspector he can name it. Now, you usually have to, if you want to make the big money, be willing to travel. And or be like Paisley, spend 10 years in the oil sands. I introduced her to an attorney in Houston. He looked at it and goes, oh, wait a minute, those people were all my clients at one point in time. He goes, well, every year up there is worth 3 anywhere else. He says, you got 30 years experience, almost as old as you are. But it's true. I've been up there when it was minus 45. That is not a nice place to be.
I'd imagine not.
No. But we've covered a lot of territory tonight.
Yeah, and Bill, again, I appreciate you coming out here to share this. I look forward to seeing you. I'm sure our paths will cross again. You'll probably be out here for Fab Tech, I would imagine. You got a lot of meetings and stuff you got to attend, so I look forward to seeing you out here.
Well, interesting. I noticed that you're co-sponsoring an event. It was at the Hard Rock.
Yes.
Well, that's the night that we don't have receptions or anything. I may play hooky and come over to the Hard Rock.
Come on out. It's a good time.
Yeah, they usually are. But but it's getting sad. It used to be I knew hundreds at Fab Tech, even back before it was Fab Tech. Now, last 2 years, I saw one person I knew. Everybody else is gone, and that's a bit unnerving. That's why I told the women, stay close by, because at least that's somebody I know.
Right.
And but you go around, you look at the people, I don't even recognize who's there. It's sad. Well, no, it's not sad. It's a circle of life, I guess. But I don't know. We will try, and we will beat our drums, and we will probably perturb some people. No, I know I will perturb some people along the way, but I'm not going to change the way I operate because it's worked. And I hope you never change your modus operandi either.
I hope not, but hopefully for the better.
Well, you've got a great formula, and just keep it up, please, because we need it.
I will. Definitely, I appreciate that, Bill.
All right, ladies and gents, I hope you all enjoyed the show. If you're finding these episodes beneficial to your welding journey, please leave me a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and consider sharing the episodes with a friend. You can also stream episodes directly from my website, arcjunkies.com, and feel free to hit me up with any questions, comments, or concerns by sending an email to show@arcjunkies.com. I hope you all have a great rest of your week. Stay safe out there, and until next time, make every weld better than your last.